Welcome to today's session. We'll set up a Spring Boot project, add and observe few loggers, and see JUnit to capture logs. Why I am creating this video? To pass on deep real-world insights. Skip it if you are fine with endless online searches and trial and error and fixes, right? Okay, so let's begin. This is a Spring Boot project. We are using Maven. If you want, you can use Gradle. And if I show you the dependencies section, it have a Spring Boot starter web flux. It have a Spring Boot starter test with the scope test and reactor test library. And again, its scope is test. Apart from this, there are no direct dependencies included in this form. Now I will go back to demo application class. And since Spring Boot by default integrate SLF4J and Logback, so we should be able to use it. Let me quickly show you. Okay, let's import SLF4J1 and factory again from SLF4J, get logger demo application dot class. Okay, so this is done. Add a logger here, logger dot. You can use your info this way or you can use this way. There's not much difference. And let's add a message here, started. Okay, just to test something, we can add a logger even before spring application dot run. Let's add info. Let's follow the same pattern, log starting. Okay, so now I'll try to run this application and see if these loggers will come or not. But one thing you see, we have imported only the SLF4J classes, and by default Spring has added logback on class path. We will see it later, but that's how the setup is right now. Okay, so we can see both the loggers, starting app and started at the end. Why there are so many logs? Because in application.properties, we have enabled the root level logger as debug. Let me comment it out and restart just to see whether this is actually working or not. So yes, if you see now, there are very few logs. We will not cover in-depth configuration of logging in this session, but in the next session. Okay, so don't worry about it. But point is that you can see the logs even before the Spring Boot application dot run, right? But have you observed this thing, that format of the logger, starting app logger, is different than this one, the one which was printed after the Spring application dot run. For example, if you observe the timestamp, it's a big one and it's very small one. Okay, so do you know the reason why it is different? Okay, I'll explain it. So one thing is for sure, that even before Spring application dot run, some logging initialization has. That's why we were able to see this log, right? And let's try to debug something. I just want to demonstrate to you. Okay. Debuggers are disabled. Okay, let's go inside the log and see what happens. Okay, so I have already added a debugger here. Now this dot is info enabled. Of course, this is true. Let's check. Okay, so this is true, which means it will result me this. Let's evaluate. Here you can see logger and here you can see a logger context. Let me copy it and I will paste it here. We will compare something. Okay, I'm just trying to pass all the debug points. Okay, so this logger is executed. We can see it here, starting app. Now it is waiting here. Let's go again in the debug. Again, info is enabled for sure. Let's see this. Let's copy the logger context again, close it, paste it here. Now, what we are doing, we are just, so this app is started logger is also there now, and this logger is also here. If I go back to the class, we can see there are two loggers, one before Spring application run and one after this. So we have captured the logger context for this and this. Now we will compare them. Okay, so there are some differences. In this logger context, if you see, property map is empty. And if you see here, property map have lot of things: application name, application group, file log pattern, lot of stuff. Here you can see reset count equals to 2. So what has happened, that there was a Spring context initialized before Spring application run. And what happens basically, that at this point of time, Spring already initializes logging context. Why? Because there is a chance you may want to log something even before you want to execute Spring application dot run. So that's why Spring has provided this, and it is helpful. In general, we don't log anything before Spring application dot run, but you might have a use case. So Spring initializes the basic logging context, very minimal one. Once this Spring application dot run is executed, it fully initializes the context, right? And that's why you can see the context is reset, and the count you can see 2 times. And below here, you can see lifecycle manager was null, and now a lifecycle manager is associated. So this is a proof that yes, even before Spring application dot run, your logging context was initialized, maybe not full, but yes, once this is executed at this point of time, you have a much more, or I should say, fully initialized logging context. Okay, I will show you one more thing. Let's say I change it to debug, and this one also to debug, and let's ensure we have debug enabled. And now let me restart the application. Okay, we can see the second logger. Let's see what about the first logger. Okay, so you cannot see the first logger, right? We cannot see this logger. Why? Let me change it to warn. Okay, so in warning, you can see the first logger. Without going in depth, I want to tell you that if you use debug or trace here, it do not work, because it must be something very important which you want to log here, and you may not need control at this level. So there is something very much necessary which you want to print. So either you put it as info, and even in the basic initialization, right, it do not provide you a lot of possibilities to configure at this level. All that control you start getting once Spring application dot run is executed. So you do not get much control here. So you can see info, error, warn, debug entries, you cannot see here. Now I want to show you one more important thing. So for example, you want to test a logger, or you want to ensure that something is logged very correctly. The Spring has provided a very simple mechanism, this output capture extension. Let me show you. This is inside Spring Boot test system package, right? I will show you the jar name here. It is a Spring Boot test, and what it do, it captures the output of the basically the logs it captures. And here in this test, you can see that you are executing this demo application dot main method. Any method you can execute, it will capture the output, and you can do some assertion. So for example, in our demo application, there is one logger starting with 3 dots, and same with 3 dots, and app is started. And if I go here, starting app, yes, here starting app is started. Let me execute this JUnit and see if it works. It failed. and why it failed. Let's see. Okay, okay. Support is already in use. Now let's execute this again. Okay, so this time it is green, and this test case has verified that that these two loggers are here. When you want to write test cases for logging, okay, so when you log your application, there are certain things which you want to log in a certain specific manner. Maybe the reason is some compliance, any other thing, but when you want to be very sure that the message is, logged out exactly like this or exactly in this pattern, you can use this. There are many other ways to test logging, but yes, this is something very easy to use provided by Spring. That's all for this session. In the next session, we will cover more things in depth. So stay tuned and happy learning.